Coming up this week on IT, do you have a zillion tabs open at the same time in your browser? Learn how to quickly find open tabs using the address bar and a hidden keyboard shortcut in Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge. Plus, I'll show you how to find open tabs when you're working with two or more browser profiles. Welcome to This Week in IT. I'm your host, Russell Smith. On this podcast, we talk about how you can get the most out of everyday tech, whether it's at home or work. Every week, I talk about how you can effectively use technology to improve your productivity and get more done. Each episode brings practical tips and advice about how you can use tech to discover new ways of working with both familiar and new software and devices in ways that you never thought possible. So welcome back to the podcast, and I hope you've had a great start to 2023. Today I wanted to talk about a problem that I find very frustrating when I'm working using the browser really as a research tool for a lot of the stuff that I do here at Petri, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this problem. Now, of course, during the course of the working day, it can be that I end up with maybe 20, 30, maybe even up to 100 browser tabs open at the same time. Now, the problem with this is that I often find that I'm looking for something that I found maybe earlier in the day, but I just can't remember exactly where it is, where that browser tab is. And of course, if you have 100 tabs open or maybe even more at the same time, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. And sometimes the problem can be so time consuming that rather spending, 30, 40 seconds or maybe up to a minute or longer trying to find that open tab, it's easier just for me to open a new tab and quickly run the search again if I'm fairly confident I can find what it is that I already had open very quickly. So how do you go about searching the actual tabs that you have open on your desktop at the moment? Now, depending on which browser you use, and I'm going to talk about Chromium-based browsers, so primarily in this episode about Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge, there are a couple of ways you can do that, but they both have a couple of limitations, which can be a little bit annoying, and I want to talk about using those features and how you overcome the problems that you will find with them, and that's what we're going to look at today. Now, of course, if I were a good person, probably I'm not a good person, but if I were a good person, I would organize all of the information that I'm trying to collect together as I go along. And there are various features within the browser that allow you to organize your workspace. So one of them is tab groups. So you can organize and color code tabs into groups, so maybe there's something that's related together and you want to organize those tabs into a group. You can do that. And specifically to Microsoft Edge, this feature doesn't exist in Chrome as far as I'm aware, or maybe there's something similar or a plugin that you can get for Chrome that does something similar. Microsoft Edge has a feature called Collections, and this is really allowing you to save and group tabs at the same time. So you would use this, for instance, if you want to come back to this research at a later date. So you've got it all organized, you give the collection a name, and collections also synchronize between devices. So I might use collections if I'm sure I'm going to need this information at some point in the future, or if I need to access this information or this set of tabs on a different device. But I only do that under specific circumstances. It's not part of my everyday workflow. The problem with things like tab groups and collections is they take extra time and effort to organize. And of course, when I'm rushing to do something, usually I've got limited time to write an article or research a podcast like this, then of course I want to do everything as quickly and as effectively as possible. And setting up tab groups and collections isn't usually part of that equation. So let's say that I've got my browser open. I could say have up to 100 tabs open at the same time across maybe several different windows. How am I actually going to find something that I was working on earlier in the day? Let's take that example. What is the solution? Now, everything depends on exactly how you work with the browser. If you work with just one user profile, so just one browser profile, which is of course the default setting in both Chrome and Edge, you actually have to manually create profiles if you want extra ones, then the built-in search functionality for open tabs is pretty good. So this works in Edge and in Chrome. You can press Ctrl, Shift and A on the keyboard and it brings up a little sidebar that basically lists the recently closed tabs and allows you to search open tabs. So you can just type the name of the website or maybe the title of the page that you're looking for, and this tool will almost certainly give you the result that you're looking for. And it doesn't matter, is that tab in the current browser window or a different browser window, providing you're working with just one profile, it will always turn a positive result. Now, the problem with this tool is twofold in my mind. The first is that it's not very discoverable, so you need to know the keyboard shortcut. Now, before I started recording this podcast today, I'd kind of forgotten what the keyboard shortcut was, so I actually had to Google it, and it took me a while to find out what the shortcut is. So that's the first thing. I don't think it's very discoverable as a tool, and I think a lot of people probably don't know how to access it. Now, I don't use Chrome, but I believe in Chrome that this feature is also accessible somewhere through the UI. So please let me know in the comments below. But in Edge, I haven't been able to find anywhere that you can access this feature in the user interface of the browser itself. So you need to know the keyboard shortcut. So that's the first problem. Well, two problems, in fact. Discoverability and the fact that it only works in one browser profile. Now, another way that you can search for open tabs in both Chrome and Edge is just to type what you're looking for in the search bar. So you can start typing either, really the title of the page that you're looking for. It could also be the domain name, I suppose, Petri, and then whatever the title of the page is. And in Edge, at least, I'm not quite sure how this works in Chrome. I think it may work a little bit differently. In fact, I'm going to go back and say that this only works in Edge because I'm not sure about Chrome, to be honest. I'll talk about a separate Chrome feature in a minute, but this definitely works in Edge. And when it finds something that's already open, it basically gives you the option to also it displays that search result in the results list in the drop down underneath the address bar, and you'll have a button that says switch to this tab. So it means instead of performing a new web search for that information that you're looking for, actually you've already got that open, probably what it is that you're looking for in a tab. Would you like to switch to it? Now, the same caveat here applies to the search feature that I described before. So it's not very discoverable, this feature. Now, I say that because in order to get the switch to this tab button appear, you actually have to type quite a lot into the address bar before you'll be given the option to switch to an already open tab. The other caveat, of course, is that it only works in the current browser profile. So if you're using more than one profile, then this is only going to show you what's running in this profile, and anything else in other browser profiles is just going to be ignored. You won't find it, basically. Now, Google Chrome goes a little bit further, and it allows you to search the address bar but to add some context. So if you know that you already have a tab somewhere that contains something that you're looking for, then you can type @tabs, then a space, and then whatever it is that you want to search for. And it will then basically show you the list of tabs that contain whatever it is that you've searched for, that search term, and you can just select and switch to that particular tab. Now, at the moment, this isn't enabled in Microsoft Edge for whatever reason. Quite often, things come into Chrome first, and then maybe a few months down the line, Microsoft enables them in Edge. Now, I don't know for sure, is this on the roadmap for features in Edge, but I hope so, because this really helps to really make this feature a little bit more reliable in the way that it works. So you have to type quite a lot before you get the option to search tabs in Microsoft Edge, because you don't get the option to add that context specifically for tabs like you do in Google Chrome. So again, this feature in Chrome, it doesn't work across browser profiles, and it doesn't work for incognito tabs as well. Okay, so I've talked a bit about people like me who work with more than one browser profile, but what does it mean exactly? Now, in Chromium-based browsers, you can set up different user profiles for different working contexts, if you like. So the reason that I have a different browser profile for work is that there are some services that I use both in my personal life and in my work life, Microsoft 365 for instance, so I have two different accounts. I have my personal account and my work account. Now, the problem is if I just use one browser profile, it means I have to keep switching between the two different accounts all of the time. So I have to log in to Microsoft 365 with my work account, then switch to my personal account. Now, Microsoft 365 is actually quite good at navigating, switching between different accounts, and you can actually do that, but you still have to switch between the accounts and the different contexts, and that's a real pain. Of course, when I start work in the mornings, I just want to open my browser and I want it to be already logged in and for it just to work. I don't want to have to keep switching between accounts all of the time. So what Browser Profiles does, it allows me to dedicate one profile that's just for my work accounts on those particular services. Now, as I've said before, if you're working with two profiles at the same time, then search, it's not able to see what's going on in the second browser profile. So it might be during the day as I've been working that I have many tabs open in my personal Edge. It might be I have many tabs open in the work profile version of Edge. So there are two versions of Edge running at the same time, but the built-in search functionality just cannot see across them. So that means if I'm looking for something, I have to make a decision first. Which version of the browser did I search for that information, and where is that tab open now? And of course, most of the time, the answer to that is, I don't know, I have no idea. So there's an interesting potential solution to that problem that I've been looking at a little bit in the last 6 or 7 months. Now, I say potential solution because it's not really designed to search for open browser tabs. Now, this is a tool called PowerToys Run. PowerToys is a free download from Microsoft. It's an open source tool that you can find on GitHub, but it's developed by the community and Microsoft. It's kind of a joint project, as I understand. You can also install it from the Microsoft Store, which is what I recommend that most people do. Now, there are about 17 tools at the moment inside PowerToys. It's an ever-expanding tool set, and PowerToys Run is essentially an app launcher. It's a little bit like Alfred for Mac OS if you're familiar with that, but it's not quite as developed as Alfred, but it's not far off as far as I understand. So what it allows you to do is basically type in the name of an app. So you press Alt space on your keyboard. It brings up a search bar in the middle of your desktop, and you can search for files, folders, OneNote pages. You can open an app. You can open or switch to running apps, I should say. And it uses this using a plugin called Window Walker. Now, sometimes, or quite a lot of the time, I would say, if I have a tab open, I can use PowerToys Run to search for that tab. So I just type, either the name of the website or the title of the page. I don't know if it's something on CNN, then I can type the name of the news story, and it will find that tab and allow me to switch to it. Now, I say it works most of the time because unfortunately it is a little bit hit or miss. So what you have to understand about PowerToys Run is that it's not actually aware of individual browser tabs. The Window Walker plugin actually works by searching running processes, and quite a lot of the time it will be able to find what you want, but unfortunately not always. So, you could use PowerToys Run as a way to search for open tabs across different browser profiles, but it's not a foolproof solution, unfortunately. Another thing about PowerToys Run and PowerToys in general is that all of these tools are designed to be app agnostic. So they're not specifically configured or, tweaked to work with a particular application like Edge. The problem with, of course, making them work with specific applications is that, when those application changes, then it could break the tool within PowerToys. So it's a bit of a programming effort to maintain that all of the time, especially across a big tool set, of course, like PowerToys. So, maybe in the future that will change, but currently that's not the case. So what is my ultimate solution for the moment? Well, there's no ultimate solution, unfortunately, but what I've decided to do is work a little bit differently with browser profiles to limit the problems that I might have with the built-in browser search, because the built-in browser search is going to be your best bet for actually finding what you want. So what I would recommend you do is if you have a separate work profile, for instance, and you can reverse this situation if you like. So what I'm going to do, what's going to work for me, is most of the things that I do for work can be made into a PWA. So that's a progressive web app. So they sit in their own window. They don't support tabs. So in principle, I can't search for something there. It's just the app that I want to work with, and that's it. Now the browser window itself, I could kind of delete that shortcut from the desktop and just not use it. But unfortunately, because PWAs don't support tabs, sometimes when you click on a link in an application, it's going to open up Edge in my work profile anyway. And the danger is when I start doing other work, I will start searching for stuff and lots of tabs will open up in my work profile version of Edge as well. And then it makes it difficult to search for open tabs. So what I decided to do is to go into the settings of my work profile browser and change the theme to a different color. Now this seems really obvious come to think of it, and I don't know why I didn't do this a long time ago, but it allows me to clearly identify in obviously a very visual way, hang on a second, this is my work profile browser and I better not use this for general browsing. This is really just for very specific work apps, and all of my general browsing I will do in my personal profile of the Edge browser, and that's where I will use Control-Shift-A or the address bar to search for any open tabs. So it improves the likelihood that those built-in search tools are actually going to return the results that I want, and we don't complicate the situation with that work profile of Edge, which is just going to be now limited to certain work applications. So I'm pretty sure you could make that work for you. You could reverse that situation. Maybe you will set a theme for your personal version of Chrome or Edge so that you can identify that separately and search in your work profile, for instance. So you can do that however you like, but it's another solution to make sure that the built-in tools actually work in the way that you would expect them to work. So if you can understand the limitations of the built-in tab search within Chromium-based browsers, then you can set up a way of working and a workflow that's going to make sure that those tools always work for you, so you don't get left in a situation where you're really frustrated trying to find what it is that you need. And hopefully @tab support, where you type @ and tabs and a space in the address bar, will come to Microsoft Edge soon, and that will give another way to access this search functionality. Of course, PowerToys Run has a lot of potential. I'd like to see it maybe, of course, really get support for tabs, at least in Microsoft Edge. I know under the current system of developing those tools, that's not very likely to happen. But, it's not quite as well supported or developed as Alfred on Mac OS. But, maybe the more widely it gets adopted, then we might see more support and more plugins developed for that as time goes on. Thanks for listening to the podcast. We've got some really interesting plans for this podcast and maybe some new ones coming up in 2023. I hope to be inviting some guests onto those to bring you some really interesting stuff and to bring as much value to you as possible, of course. If you found the podcast useful, then please hit the like button. And if you'd like to see future episodes, then don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification to make sure you don't miss out. If you'd like to share it with any people who might find it interesting as well, that would be great. All the support that you can bring us is really appreciated. But that's it from me today, and I'll see you next time.